Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 21 of budget crafting. In this series, I try and do requests, and I was requested to show how I paint my fabrics and dye my fabrics, and I was also requested how do I dye my string. So we're going to do both of those today at the same time, and there's just a couple of different tips and tricks that I wanted to show you. But so these are just some of my painted fabrics. This is my scrunch fabric, and this is one of my favorite ways to do up some fabric. Now, normally I do this in the summer when the sun is out and it's hot outside, or I do it in the winter when my wood stove is going, because it has to dry and it's all squunched together. So I am going to do one today, but it will take a few days for it to dry. And depending on how damp it is outside and everything, doing this when you don't have any kind of heat to dry it, it will take a long time to dry, and you'll want to keep an eye on it to make sure that it does not, to make sure it doesn't get moldy or musty. So this is a brown one, brown and orange that I did, which obviously I only have a little piece left because that's one of my go-to colors, and I've used most of that one. But then I also have some dyed and stamped fabric that this one, all of these here were done with watercolor markers, just kids markers. This one is paint. I can tell by how stiff it feels. It's acrylic paint. That does get a little bit stiff, but that's okay. Again, these are watercolor markers, and so are these. So I do have a few other ones here to do, and I wanted to show you a couple of different ways that I do dye fabric. So scooch that over for a second. So to start with, I just want to show you, this is just paint and water. So for these I used the Arteza paints. These are acrylic paints, but they're more of a maybe college grade or something. You know, they're not the children's acrylic paints, which I do that also. It works just as well. These just have a little bit more pigment in them. So I put some water in some kind of a squeeze bottle or a spray bottle. And these bottles are from some drink mixes. This is an older one, and then they came out with this smaller one, or different shape. But the way to get the tops off of these, once you've got all the juice, it's like sugar-free juice that you just squirt into your water. The way to get the top off is give it a little bit of a twist so that you can get a hold of it, and then just pop it off. And then you can just pop it back on when you're done. Now, the thing about these is the squirter kind of wants to squirt like really fast. So I kind of stick my scissors in the top of it to try and kind of cut it a little bit. But I've got probably about this much water in here. And then I just squeezed in some paint. If you don't think it's enough, you put some more. If you think it's too dark, you add a little water. And then you're just going to mix it really, really well so that when it comes out, it's just colored water, and will soak into your fabric and doesn't leave any big blobs of paint on your fabric. So once you give it a really good shake, then you're just going to, you definitely need some napkins or rags around for this project. Okay, so then you're just going to pop the top back on. And now you've got your colored water. So let me see, that one, I think that's pink. I kind of wanted to use it like with orange, because since it's yellow. Okay, so here's some orange. Alrighty, so to use your colored water, that's just colored again with acrylic paint of some sort, there's two ways to do all of your fabrics. And I just wanted to show you the difference. I'm just going to take little bits today, which I can still also use. I can use them for stamping or across the top of a page or something in a journal. But I just have some water here, and it has a titch of color to it, but not really much. You don't want to use really your paint water. But I'm going to get one piece wet, and I squeezed it out, but it's still pretty wet. And I'm going to show you one piece dry, because it makes a difference as to how your color is going to soak in, whether it's wet or dry. So this one is wet, And so I'm just going to put like a couple of, I'm going to try and put a couple of, oops, see, this one just really, let me see. That's the one I just made, so maybe I haven't, just kind of want to cut into that plastic bit that's there so that I just get a drip instead of having to squeeze it. And I opened it up really big that time. So this is, again, acrylic paint with water on wet fabric. And again, that one doesn't feel very opened either. Okay, and I didn't shake that one, so I can tell that the paint looks a little solid on there, but that's okay. So there it is with water. Let me just tap up some of this. And actually, if you keep some extra fabric around, use your fabric to mop it up, then you have even more colored fabric. But I'm going to drip this onto, if I can get it to drip. Okay, so that's pretty thick paint, but that's okay because we're going to want it to soak in a little bit. And there. So now you can tell right off, even though I squirted a lot of paint on here, there's pretty much a lot of paint on this one also. And when you look at it, you can see that it's a little bit darker. Not much because of how much paint I put on the wet one, but it is a little darker and it's much more separated. They really blend together better if your fabric is wet. And it depends on what you're looking for to get out of your coloring, whether you want it to be, you know, more in its own area or whether you really want it to blend together. So I'm going to show you a couple that I did. Now this is kind of a can't think of what it's called. Kind of like a denim, it was like a white piece of a light denim. And you can see this one was not wet and it really doesn't soak through as much. Now this very, very thin cotton, it does soak through, but not as much as when it's with water. So this one was orange and red, or orange and pink. And this one was dry. This one was wet, so this one soaked in much more. But this one did kind of blend more together because of how much I squirted on it. But you can see that, I lied. This was the wet one. I can tell because it's all wrinkled. So this was the wet one. This was the dry one. And neither one soaked through as much. Or it's just not showing up. Now this was my wet piece of fabric with purple and blue. Again, these are with the acrylic watercolors. So this was the wet one and this was the dry one. And so you can see that, you know, they're much lighter when you wet the fabric. And, you know, just kind of showing the difference here is, these are some sprays that I have. And this is wet, this is dry. And you can see how that didn't even quite soak all the way out to the edges. And that's again with that leathery type. And this one was wet and this one was dry. So, you know, you get a totally different effect if you do them wet or if you do them dry. Just hang these up over here and let them drip dry. Okay. Like I said, I should have had a piece of fabric out to wipe this up. But normally I don't do such small pieces. So these pieces here are done. These are just some sprays that I have. And to tell you the honest to goodness truth, I'm not 100% positive what they are. Because I just it's been such a long time since I put them together. But I do believe that what those are is, I believe that these are from like bingo daubers. And I just opened up the bingo dauber and poured the ink from them into these little spray bottles. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. We'll do a wet and a dry piece. So, you know, you don't have to have anything special. All you're looking for is some kind of color. So we've got acrylic paint. This would be kind of like, I would say, an ink. You know, those bingo daubers are some form of an ink. And so they're a very liquid color instead of thicker like the acrylic paints. So just spray a little bit of this on here. Oh, well, that one didn't spray as well a second time. But just to kind of give you an idea of how to, whoops, that one just wants to go wherever it wants to go. So, but just an idea of how these are blending together a bit, and these are still saying very, very separate, and that's just because that's wet, that's not. So, you know, so there's acrylic paint and ink. If you have re-inkers, you can use those. And use those to color your fabric. Now, whenever you use any kind of a sprayer, always make sure that you wipe off the nozzle. And if you get one that is really clogged up, normally if it worked before, all you need to do is I just fill up a little basin of hot soapy water, and I usually make it pretty hot. I just throw them in there, leave them for 15-20 minutes, half hour or something, then take them out, rinse them good, and they usually come right back. Now, sometimes I have some Dollar Tree sprayers that I had, and those ones, some of them didn't work to start with, so soaking them didn't do me any good. Now, this one is really bright and blended, and this one is made with just homemade alcohol inks. And a couple colors that go together. The thing with alcohol inks is they smell like alcohol. And they're really made for a non-porous surface, you know. So, and this one you don't want to mix with water because water's not going to do anything to it. The water and the alcohol don't react to each other. If you really wanted, let's say you've got it on there and you wanted it more blended, then what you would do is maybe put a little bit of rubbing alcohol on it to make it blend a little bit more. The rubbing alcohol will make it move a little bit because that's what these are made with. But normally I would not use alcohol inks for this for a couple of reasons. You know, it takes a while to make your own alcohol inks. I do have a video on how to make your own alcohol inks, but and it doesn't make a whole ton, so dyeing fabric with it to me is kind of not the most economic way to dye your fabric. So but I did want to show you, if that's all you have, you can use that also. So let's see, then watercolors. Now this is the very easiest, or cheapest I should say. You buy kids watercolor markers, and now here we have no water on these two and water on these two, and so that's how they blended with the water and without the water. So you do get a little bit of a different look, and with different types of excuse me, different types of fabric, or depending on how much water you put on it, will make a difference as to how they blend. I'm going to do the blue and the purple again because they're a nice dark color. They're easy to see. So, but these are just watercolor markers. I got these on sale. You don't need anything like, these are literally just, they're the same as just plain old kids watercolor markers. So, you know, you can get them at the Dollar Tree. You know, any kind, not this specific set right here. But, you know, you can get watercolor markers at the Dollar Tree or at Walmart. Probably fairly cheap right now, being that school has just started. But you just put some on some plastic. If you don't, this is just a plastic file folder. You need 2 pieces of plastic. If you don't have this, use a Walmart bag. Use any kind of a plastic bag. You know, whatever you have that's plastic, you can use. I like this because it's solid, so it's easier to move around. But, because what you're going to do is put your marker on there, spray some water on there, and then just smush 2 pieces of plastic together. Okay, then you're just going to peel that back, and then you get this look. Now, we do this all the time with paper. but this is what it's going to look like with fabric. I've got one I'm going to put in water. So we'll put that one down there. See, that already starts soaking up that color. And this one will soak up the color, but we're going to have to push it onto the color to get it to soak it up. So we're going to go like that. And there we go. There's the look of the wet. And there's the look of the dry. So that's the differences that you get. And then you can just, because there's so much color here, and I want to pick it up, but I want it to be blended together a little bit. So I just went ahead and wetted this piece of fabric. And I'm just going to use this to wipe it off. No point wasting all that color. Okay. And so when you do that, you get more of a solid color with just a little bit of tones to it. And then you also get that wrinkly look, which I really like. Okay, so let's see here. So we've done acrylic paints, and we've done inks, and we've done alcohol inks. And let's do dyeing string. So I just bought, it's best to dye cotton string. I bought this string at the Dollar Tree, and it's just their regular cotton string. And so then I just take some of it. Now, you just need a place to kind of hang it up. So depending, the first time that I did this, I think I did, oh, I don't even remember. I did like 30 feet of every color. And so I had to take them outside and hang them on my fence on the arena because I didn't have any place else where I could like hang them up without them being all bunched up. So do think about that before you. And I have just a little bit of water in here, about 1/4 of an inch of water. And then I'm just going to use this as just regular kids craft paint. Whoops, kind of a lot of paint there, but it doesn't matter. It won't hurt anything. And then just stir that up. Oh, that was quite a bit of paint, but yet it's not real dark. And that's the difference between like the Arteza acrylics, you know, because they're more of a mid-grade of paint versus the kids craft paints. They always wind up just a little bit lighter because they don't have as much pigment in them. That's really your difference. So then just take your string, stick it in there, and then just stir it around. It really does not take long for this to color. And if you want to, you can do the same thing with your string and inks. It doesn't have to be paint. And then once you let it set for just a little bit, just go ahead and take it out. And then I normally just kind of try and take the excess paint off. And of course, I'm going to tie this one in a knot. I've already done all of my colors except for these two. And I didn't have a problem. Good, I didn't have a problem with that one either. So there we go. So now you've just got your wet colored string. And you're just going to hang it up and let it dry. They normally dry a little bit lighter than they look when you first have them hanging there. And then this is what they look like when they're dry. They're a little bit stiff when they're dry. I roll them around. I just make my own little like thread reels and just wrap them around there so that I have them when I need them. But so here I've got a yellow one. And then here's green. Now the reason this is so stiff is because it's done with acrylic paint. Had I done it with and ink, it would not be as stiff. I kind of like the stiffness. I normally do mine with acrylic paint just because I just like the feel of it and the stiffness of it. But that's just me. If you want it to be much softer, you know, you can do it with an ink of some sort if you have some, and that won't get as hard because the acrylic paint is actually a plastic, and that's what makes it hard. So I also have here, this is just some yarn that I got. I got some little bundles of yarn. They were already cut. And so all I did was put some pinky water in there. And that was one of these dyes. And so I just put it in there and just set this on top and let it just soak up into my string. So if you let that happen, then you wind up with kind of a bit of a variegation. Now I'm not sure because this soaked up all of my fluid. If I had had more in there, it may have gone all the way to the other end, but that would have probably taken a long time. I mean, this was sitting for like 3 hours before it soaked up all the water. So I don't know how far it would go, but I did want to see how far it would go. That's why I just kind of put part of it in there. I did the same thing with the string. I put this little bit in there and that much of it soaked up the string. So it does soak up a little bit, but you know, really kind of what's the purpose? Might as well put it all in there and just let the whole thing get colored right away. Now, I do have to say that this must be some kind of a polyester or something, not 100% cotton, because it took quite a while for it even to take the color. It really didn't. The cotton will soak up the color right away, but if something is more of a polyester, it takes a while for it to soak up the color. And I'm just going to see if I can get some of this color off my hands here, because there was a couple things I wanted to show you about t-shirt material too, which you may have seen before, but I found my old t-shirts, a couple of them that I had set aside when I was getting out my fabric, and I just wanted to show you this cool little trick. You might know it, you might not, so it's just something that's kind of fun. So if you have a t-shirt, it needs to be a cotton t-shirt, and but let me see here. Got a bit of a sleeve here. Okay. So if you don't have, it doesn't have to be a loop. I like to cut off, I cut off the bottom of the t-shirt because that doesn't work where the sewing is. I mean, you do have the spot where it's sewn together, but I don't have the whole part that's sewn, you know, like this. You can't have that part right there. Okay, just a piece of t-shirt. If it's in a loop, which if it's all the way across the t-shirt and it's a pretty big t-shirt, you wind up, it's hard to stretch. But what we're going to do is we're just going to cut this so that we have a little bit of a loop. So now we have this loop right here, and we've got this flat fabric. And then all you do is you just stretch it. And when you stretch it, it turns into basically a little cord. It rolls itself in on itself. And then we've got the spot here where I had pulled on it, you know, like as I was stretching it. So that didn't stretch as much, so I'm going to stretch it there too. And then stretch this other end. Now it never rolls up perfectly where the sewing is. But, you know, you can either leave that like that or take it off. And like I said, this just to me makes it easier to stretch if it's in a loop. But you don't have to have it in a loop. You can just have a straight piece. I'll just cut another piece off of here. But I think they're really cool. At one time I used to dye them and then group a bunch of them together, and they made really kind of a cool necklace or neck collar or something. I don't know what you want to call it. But here I'm going to cut this part off so that all we have is just a strip of t-shirt material. And again, then I'm just going to grab both ends and give it a pull. And there we go. See, it's two little ribs. On the other side, it's just a really cool piece of fabric. So, or like, you know, it's kind of like a, I don't know what you want to call it, a really thick cord. And because it's cotton, it will soak up any kind of, I None of these are stirred. It will soak up the color if you want to put it in some color and give it some color. So, let's see, that was something I wanted to show you, and I think that, oh, and one more, how to make the scrunched fabric. Okay, so I have a wider piece of fabric here, and with this I do spray it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get that whole piece wet, and then squeeze it out. I'm going to just kind of tuck that into some of these colors, just for the fun of it. Okay, so now I've got a piece of fabric. It's about as wide as my can is tall. I normally use vegetable cans, you know, but I don't know what I did with them. I can't find them. There's been every so often now that I have the new studio and I've moved things, that I can't find things. Absolutely drives me crazy. This is a really long piece of fabric. The longer it is, the lighter your center is, because your colors don't soak through as well. So I'm going to take some of this off because I don't like a super light color. So you just wrap your wet fabric around a can, and then you take some rubber bands and just twist them around on there any which way. There's no right way to do it, but I'm just going to twist it around a few times. This is going to hold it all together, and as we push it down on the can, it's going to help it stay that way. So there's no right number either. I just put on enough rubber bands until I feel like I've got enough on there, like it's really held well. And then you're going to just take it and scrunch it. So where the rubber bands are, in some places it will stay white or light, much lighter. And so then you just do it like that. Depending on how much you scrunch it together, also will make a difference on maybe how much color soaks through. And then with this one, I always use a liquid color. So I'm really liking the looks of these two together, but they don't spray very well. I guess we will use, I'm going to use just, this is the Arteza acrylic paint. And I'm just going to use those. And so you're just going to squish it on in a few places. And because this comes out so fast, ooh, I don't want orange. Do purple and pink with it. You know, it's really getting a lot of color on there right away. And again, because your fabric is wet, it is going to lighten it up a bit. But you just want to make sure that you get color over the whole thing. And make sure that you have colors that will blend nicely together. You want to make sure that you kind of get some color on there so that it will soak all the way through. But be careful about letting the colors get too mixed together, as far as like putting on so much color that it really mixes, because then you kind of have just one color fabric. So there we go. Now you take that, you set it aside, you let it dry, and then when you take the rubber bands off and open it up, you're going to get the look of this, and it also stays scrunched like this. Now, if it's pretty wet when you take it off, the scrunch will go away, you know, or a lot of it will. So in order to really get that, because, you know, that really stays in there really well. And in order to get that to happen, you have to let it dry. I've never tried drying it with a heat gun or anything like that, but you know, I don't know how well that would work. So I will show you, maybe I'll try and remember to show you this sometime once it's dry. But like I said, this is going to take forever to dry. I knew I couldn't even do a sample because I knew that I would have had to do the sample a couple weeks ago to get it to be dry by the time that I did this video. So I'm just going to soak up what's here. And using a lot of blues and purples lately, brighter colors. So I might as well just get this fabric. And then I just take these and I hang them up. Open them up and hang them up. Make sure you've got some place where they can drip, that they're not going to make any kind of a problem. And I just have a plastic tablecloth on my table here, and I have an indoor clothes dryer, just the thing that folds up and then it unfolds. So that makes it really easy to just hang them up there and let them dry. So that is what we have. Let me see. Kind of, shall we see what this looks like? Let's find the end. Let's grab a little bit more red there. Make it go that way. And let's put a little more purple there. Kind of squish it that way. There. So that's kind of fun. A little bit messy, a little bit muted colors, but it's fun. So I'll hang that up. But yeah, being that it's 100% cotton, it takes the color really well. And then you can do whatever you want with your colors. You can drip them on paper. You can use them to just dye as much fabric until they run out, which is a lot of times what I do. You can throw enough string in there to soak it all up and make yourself some colored string. But, so, these are some of the fabrics that we just did. See the difference between dry and wet? Huge difference. There's dry and wet. This is ink. That is acrylic paint. This is alcohol ink. And kids markers, dry and wet. So there's so many simple ways to do this, and you can try it with any kind of fabric you have. Try it with a small piece, see how it works out. See if you like it better dry, see if you like it better wet. So, but, you know, make your scrunchy ribbon, because that is so fun to make and fun to use. But thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. I hope this helped you out on the how to dye fabric and how to dye string. So, you know, this is just our way of doing it. This is not dyed fabric for wearing in clothing or anything like that. This is for your crafting projects. You know, the acrylic paint might wash out quite a bit and really, you know, really wash out the color. You know, your inks may, you know, if you were to try to wash any of this, the inks might bleed, you know. So this is made for crafting. It's not made for wearing. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed today's project. If you tried, I hope you have a good time. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate you. And I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.